Hey, what's up guys? It's me, Anthony, here to talk to you guys about another episode of Constellation. Now, we're 3 episodes into this series, and every episode I get even more confused. And episode 3 is probably the most confusing episode of them all, but it's also one of my favorites. But hey, if you want to talk more Constellation, this is going to be the place to do that. So don't forget to subscribe and like this video so we can just create this Constellation family of people being confused all the time. But thank you guys so much for all the comments that I've been having so far talking about this show. I really like when we could just talk about a show and, just throw our theories out there without people saying, hey, what you said is terrible and I hate you. I got some of those comments, but hey, that just comes with the territory. But as always, guys, if you want to jump around in this video, there's going to be timestamps in the description down below. So if you want to go straight to the theories that I have, or just go to the review that I have of this episode, you can do that. So without further ado, let's get into episode 3 of Constellation. So the episode starts off with who I'm going to be calling Joe number 1, since we first saw her in the first episode. So this is going to be Joe number 1, as she and Alice number 2, since she's not the Alice that Joe number 1 is looking for. If you're confused by now, don't worry. As we go on to this, you'll be understanding my logic. They make their way into the snowstorm looking for the other Alice. Joe pushes ahead and Alice quickly starts to lose sight of her into the snowstorm. Back in another reality, the other Joe starts the process of her recovery after returning to Earth from the International Space Station. Joe attends a group dinner with her fellow crewmates as they mourn the death of Commander Lancaster. Joe tells Paul's widow that he was a great man and calls her Erica, but she says that isn't her name and her name is Frida. This is pretty much more confirmation that there is probably 2 versions of Joe. One is in a different reality and the other is in a different reality. So they kind of switch places. Joe and the rest of her crew attend a closed-door meeting where they try to investigate what had happened on the ISS. During the meeting, Irina and the others question if what Joe is saying is true. Joe says what hit the ISS was a person, but when pressed further, Ira tries to suggest that Joe might have imagined it. But we all know that Ira is a sly person. She knows what's going on. But the real question is, why is she putting up this front? She just doesn't want to make people know and understand that there might be a possibility of a different reality, or is she covering up something? We then jump to another reality where Bud is attending a space convention and has a debate about what happened when he was on Apollo 18. Ian Rogers debates that Bud is a liar and that he didn't really go into space because he can't remember what he wrote in his book. There's a lot of information jam-packed into this segment. As a matter of fact, a lot of segments with the Henry/Bud character. There's so much information that we need to talk about. And again, we're going to go into the theory section where I'm going to be discussing all my thoughts and questions that I have with this character and just what he is saying, because there's a lot of stuff. We then cut back to Henry, who sees that the Cal device is showing the same signals that he saw when he retrieved it from the escape pod when Joe returned to Earth. He tries to take a picture, but for some reason it doesn't show up on his phone. Alice and Wendy start playing hide and seek, and while Alice is hiding, she sees who she thinks is Wendy throw her stuffed bunny on the ground and start to stomp on it. When Alice tries to confront Wendy, she is gone. Henry then talks to Alice about quantum physics and says that the same thing can be in the 2 different states at the same time, and that there is even an instant when 2 states can come together. Again, another crazy and very pivotal moment in this series with Henry and what he is saying to Alice here. And I think, when we get to the theories part, I have a theory. I have a big theory that I think can be backed up with what Henry is saying here. But again, I know I'm building up to suspense, but that's in the theory section. Henry brings Alice back to Joe's place and thanks Joe for bringing back the Cal device, and says that if she ever needed someone to talk to who knows what she has been through, she knows where to find him. Joe and the rest of her crewmates pay their respects to Commander Paul, and during that time, Joe says that she found a picture of the flight suit that she thinks hit the ISS. She shows the picture to everyone, and it winds up being a picture of young Irina in the 60s. So I think it's safe to say that an alternative reality version of Irina is the one that hit the space station, and she's the one floating around in space. And there's some evidence to back that up, but again, in the theory section. Joe puts down some flowers at the base of the tree that was planted by Paul, when suddenly Joe sees Paul with similar flowers as if he is mourning someone's death as well. Back at the closed door meeting, Joe concedes that what she saw at the space station was a garbage bag and everyone gets to go home. Back at home, Joe starts to realize that things are different, and she tries to drop a glass and she expects it to float. So I don't know what reality she came from where the glasses, if you drop something, it starts floating. The Jetsons, maybe, I don't know. Ira meets up with Henry and tells him that she is dying and that she has stage 4 lymphoma. We then jump back to Bud as he meets up with Ian and tells him that he fixed everything on Apollo 18. Bud says that he thought he saved everyone, but suddenly they were dead. He says it wasn't his fault, but it was Henry who destroyed everything. Enraged and probably drunk, Bud pushes Ian off the side of the cruise ship, causing him to land into the water. And I'm pretty sure that's the last time we're gonna see this guy. Well, let's look at the IMDb. Yeah, he only has 1 episode credit, so I think it's safe to say that this guy's gone. The show ends with the other Joe telling the other Alice that she isn't her daughter, and Alice replies, "What did you do to my mother?" And that's the end of episode 3, and there's so much stuff that I didn't even really talk about in the recap that we need to talk about because it's crazy, guys. So I think this is yet another great episode for Constellation, though I'm still confused, and I'm pretty sure a lot of you are confused, so if you want to join the confusion train, let's jump on. But I think this episode had a lot of information that we can really dive deep into and talk about and think about and theorize about. And I don't want to bury the lead here, but we're going to go into theories pretty soon. And even though while I liked it, I can see that this episode might be the breaking point for certain people. If the things that they're saying in this show are going over your head from like the first 2 episodes, and then you get into this one that has a massive juggernaut, talking about quantum physics and different states of realities and people floating in space and going around in circles and floating glasses, then this probably won't be the episode for you. But for those of you that are going to stick around and want to know more, let's jump right into the theory section because I got a lot to say, and I think there's so much for me to talk about that I'm not going to get everything. So don't get mad at me if I don't talk about what you saw and say, "Hey Anthony, you missed that, I hate you," or anything like that. No, don't do that. Most of you guys are pretty good at that. But I'm going to miss some stuff. I'm not going to be able to say everything. So let me know in the comments down below what other things that I missed or stuff that you found out, or you're just some thoughts. You're like, "Hey, you know what? I rewatched it and I found this out. That was interesting." So first thing I want to talk about are the pills that Henry and Irina were taking in the first couple of episodes. We see that these pills show up again, but this time they're given to Joe. And so I want to know more about these pills. I tried to do like some magnetizing and looking at the labels on there. I didn't really find much information. Maybe some of you guys can figure that out, but I want to know more about those pills. I don't really know what those pills are for. It looked like Joe was the only one that was getting those pills and the rest of her crewmates weren't giving those. But then again, they could have just given them off camera, but I really think that Joe is probably the only one that's getting these pills because Irina knows what's going on and she knows that Joe is going through something similar to maybe what she went through back in the day. The next thing I want to talk about is Bud. Now, I think we can figure out and follow that Bud and Henry are 2 different people, or 2 different people of the same person in 2 different realities, if that makes sense. And Bud says something pretty interesting during his debate with Ian on the stage at the convention, where he says that, we just lost somebody during one of these events, and now that the NASA space station is closed down. So we can kind of gather that in his reality, or the reality that he is in now, something happened similar to what happened to Joe in the other reality, but it was more catastrophic because it seems like every worst possible outcome has happened in Bud's current reality. Ian also says that he doesn't believe Bud because he feels like Bud and the rest of his crewmates should have had radioactive poisoning when they re-entered Earth's orbit, but there's no signs of that, at least that what we know of from Bud. Because for me, I think that he switched realities right before he was able to get contaminated with the radiation, but that also goes to with Irina. I think Irina was one of his crewmates during that time, and she switched place with a different Irina, and now that explains why the Irina that met with Henry has cancer diagnosis, because she was in the reality where Bud was at, but then they switched places. I swear it makes sense in my head. But the short answer is that Bud is in a different reality. This isn't where he is from. It looks the same, but it's not the same. And the same thing is happening to Joe, the two different Joes in their realities. They switch places. And the last thing I want to talk about, I know there's like so much other things I can talk about. I could be here forever, but you know, I got things to do. But the one thing that I really wanted to touch on was with Joe when she was laying the flowers down on the tree for Paul. She sees Paul in the distance or in like a different reality. And that goes back to what Henry was talking to Alice about, the different states of reality, where he says like there's a white state, there's a black state, and then there's a gray state. And to me, I took it as there is 3 different dimensions. There's 2 different ones, and then there's one where it's kind of blended together, but it's its own entirely. And I think the reality that Paul is from is that 3rd gray state of reality where Joe is the one that passed away and Paul is the one that survived. That's why she keeps on seeing him, because like they keep on intertwining at certain moments in reality. I sound smart, but those are the things that are on my mind for right now, guys. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Do you think that Paul is in a different reality? Do you think there's 3 realities? I know some people might disagree with that one, but let me know what you think in the comments down below. But guys, don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel if you want to stay up to date with everything Constellation. I'm really enjoying doing this series for you guys. I got a lot of shows that I want to talk about coming up in the next couple of days. There's Shogun, there's a show called Elsbeth that I want to talk about. There's a lot of stuff. So if you want to see more of me just talking about those kind of shows, this is the place to be. Thank you guys again for all your support, and remember guys, keep watching.